Alright, I'm Jordan, I'm an addict. They only asked me to do this like 10 minutes ago, which I'm really grateful for because I just didn't have enough time to like really trip myself out and get anxious about it. So, yeah. Michelle. Michelle is great. Michelle does a lot for her recovery. She sets a really good example for other people in the fellowship, including her super handsome husband. And not only does she like talking to a crowd much more than me, but she's better at it. So Michelle, come up here right now, please.
Okay, let's see. I think it's really important to be able to be heard when you're speaking. So let me get this microphone right. All right, I'm Michelle and I'm an addict. Thank you guys so much for inviting me to be your Sunday morning speaker. And I want you to know I feel fit this morning, spiritually fit. And that's because I work out spiritually and physically. But I was looking in the mirror this morning and I was thinking, I feel great. I feel like I have six-pack abs. I feel like I've got, I feel like I look good. I don't look as good as I feel, but I feel good. And that is a restoration of sanity. That is proof that this program works because I suffer from the disease of not enough. And when I grew up, I could never be enough. And that's why I started using. I had eating disorders when I was little. I was promiscuous. And I just wanted more of everything because I felt empty inside. So it stands to reason when I found drugs that I couldn't get enough there either. Because there's never enough outside of myself that's going to make me enough inside of myself. And that includes how I look. And I have so much to say to y'all today, but I don't want to keep you too late because some of you still have to get stuff out of your room. I know you guys have a long drive, all of that. So contemplating what all I want to tell you can be an act of obsession in and of itself. It's like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? What am I going to say? What do you guys need to hear? What if somebody needs to stay clean and they're only going to stay clean if I say the right thing? The truth is, there's nothing you can say wrong to an addict who wants to stay clean, and there's nothing you can say right to an addict who wants to use. I'm not that powerful. I'm just not. And I'm not that spiritual. And I was obsessing over being the Sunday morning spiritual speaker, because that's spiritual. And I was telling my husband, like, why would they pick me to be the spiritual speaker? Jimmy was so much more spiritual than I am, and he should probably be the Sunday, and I could just be the funny Friday night speaker, and it's all wrong. And then Jordan said, well, who said the Sunday morning speaker has to be spiritual? And I said, well, it's all over, the names. It's a spiritual breakfast. It's a spiritual speaker. And he's like, but is it? And I looked at the schedule. It doesn't say spiritual at all on any of those things. I was like, oh. Phew. But then I was like, well, then what is my topic then, if not spirituality? So then the theme of the convention is a time for healing. But how do we do that in Narcotics Anonymous, if not spiritually? So, when it comes to spirituality, for me, it is all about relationships. Like, I have to have a relationship with a power greater than myself. And I thought, because I would hear people share about it all the time, when I got to Narcotics Anonymous, like, you got to get right with God, you got to have a higher power, you got to turn it over, you got to create a conscious contact. And I thought, well, I don't qualify for this program because I don't have a higher power. And all of you do, and I'm different. But I was desperate. I was alone. I was in pain. I would cry myself to sleep at night. Like, all of my relationships were hollow shells. I was a shell of a person. I've heard people call it the dead world, a half-life. And that was what was true for me. And I might have looked like my life was somewhat manageable at that time in my life, because my life went through manageability waves, homelessness, having a home, dropping out of school, going to school. Like, it went through waves because I would switch drugs and I would think that that would change my life. I never thought it was the drugs that was the reason that I couldn't continue to be successful. I thought it was the other things in my life that were creating problems for me. But the truth of the matter is that I did have a higher power when I was in active addiction, and that power greater than myself was the disease. It was the drugs. And I turned my life over to that all the time. I would make my decisions based on where would there be better or more drugs. Well, I would make my decisions on who to date with, like, who had the most drugs. Like, every decision I made, I ran by that power greater than myself and then chose accordingly. But when I got to Narcotics Anonymous, I didn't understand any of this. I didn't understand the program at all. But they said if you want to stay clean, you need a new solution. Drugs were my solution. And I did understand that. Because when I stopped using, I didn't have a solution, and I was miserable. A lot of people, life gets immediately better for when they stop using, and that's great if that's your story. But for me, it was impossible to live without drugs. And I was absolutely miserable and incapable of functioning. And they said the steps are the solution, but I didn't know what that meant. I read the steps on the wall, and I thought, is that working them? So finally, I asked somebody to take me through the steps. And I made it clear to her that I did not need a sponsor, because I'm not as sick as all of you. I just need someone to take me through the steps. So please don't get confused about that. Obviously, that is what a sponsor does. A sponsor takes you through the steps. And there may be other things that come along with that, but that is the function of a sponsor-sponsee relationship, is that you need to work the steps. I have worked the steps, so let me show you how, like Ava talked about last night. And so I started that process, and she told me, my sponsor said, there may be a time in your recovery that the only thing that stands between you and you and using is a higher power. So you need to have one. And I see a lot in the fellowship this approach to a higher power is like, well, I already know this. I already know this higher power. I've heard of this higher power. Other people around me have this higher power. And I maybe had this higher power before in my life, so I'm just going to take this one, and I'm just going to use it. And that's fine if that's what's true for you. But I find that the most important thing when it comes to the pursuit of a power greater than myself is honesty. Like, I have to be honest about what I do and don't believe, what I do and don't understand, and also curious about the process. And I have to be willing to question for myself, like, what is my truth and how do I communicate that? And I didn't know anything about honesty, and especially not self-honesty. So I started with the first step, and I started to understand that the things that I thought about myself, like, just weren't true. Like, I thought that I was only experiencing homelessness because I was like a hippie. I'm a free spirit. I don't want a home. For all of you guys with homes, you're shackled to your belongings. But truthfully, I just couldn't keep it together to pay my rent. But I couldn't be honest about that, because the first step strips away rationalization, justification, reservations, and denial. And when I take away all of those things, like, those are the tools. Those are like my comfort, my blanket. And that's the only thing that's preventing me from seeing the reality of my disease. So when that's gone, then that not enough, it comes roaring back in, and I'm completely empty. And I need something to make me feel whole. And I could reach for sex or money or gambling or drugs or another puppy, like whatever it is, something outside of me that is going to make me okay, make me full, make me whole. And that's when, if I surrender to Narcotics Anonymous, that if 1 is my problem, then 2 through 12 are my solution. And so I have to start doing some work. And in step 2, I have to be honest about the questions that I have about that step. That step for me feels like it is the most unique. Like, people have struggles with different parts of that step. Like, some people think I can't be restored to sanity. I'm not good enough. All of you can, but I can't. Some people have a struggle with the power greater than myself. Like, well, I think it has to be this one thing that I'm not comfortable with, and I can't believe in that. Or others have trouble with the insanity part. Like, I'm not insane. Like, maybe I've done some crazy things, but I'm not insane. Or the restoration part. Like, how can I be restored if I don't know what sanity is? I've never experienced that. So it's just like very complex, and it's really important that I take that honesty from the first step into the second step and say, I don't believe if I don't believe. And ask other people, like, what does coming to believe look like for me? So the process of coming to believe, first of all, was not in a power greater than myself, but that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity. Like, that I'm not the one that is going to be restoring myself, and also that restoration is possible. So finally I get to the third step, and I'm starting to think about, like, what is a power greater than myself for me personally? And I could think about, like, all these attributes that I wanted a power greater than myself to have, but I didn't really relate those things to me. Like, a higher power could be forgiving, it could be compassionate, it could be loving, but it doesn't necessarily forgive or love me. And so I really had to work with that as well. And since we're talking about a spiritual breakfast, a spiritual meeting, I mean, obviously I made that up in my head, but that's what we're talking about. I'm sticking with it, okay? And so I'd really like to just kind of focus on the spiritual steps. And the truth is, like, all of the steps have spirituality within them, but 3, 5, 7, and 11 actually use the word God, or in 7, Him. And I won't go too far into addressing that. Call your higher power whatever you want. It can be a him, it can be a her, it can be an it. You can, my little sister, she's not in the program, but she's been around recovery, and now my other little sister's in recovery. She's like, my higher power, who I choose to call Hank, she says. Calls it Hank. You call it whatever you want, doesn't matter, but call it. You know, like, that's the most important thing. Like, how do I talk to it? How can I talk to my higher power? And in the third step, it says that I need to be able to express the entire range of human emotions to a power greater than myself. And that can be very difficult for people, especially if you have a preconceived notion of what your higher power is, because you might have a formal way of speaking to your higher power, and it might not be okay to speak to your higher power in other ways. But what happens when, like, we've heard some very powerful emotional stuff at this convention, whether it's from the podium or whether it's in a marathon meeting or whether it's in a workshop or just talking one-on-one. And a lot of these people have been through some things that shakes the faith in a higher power. It's like, why would a higher power allow these things to happen to me especially, but also other people? And how can I talk to my higher power about that if I can only express gratitude, and if I can only express love, and if I can only ask for power of your will for me, and the, you know, knowledge of your will for me and the power to carry that out? How can I tell you, God, I'm fucking mad at you. Like, I don't understand what you're doing. I don't think I'm strong enough to handle this. So instead, there's this rift that happens between me and a higher power when things aren't going the way that I want them to go. So it's really important in step 3 that I understand, like, what does prayer look like for me and my higher power? Like, what is that relationship? And I was obsessed with this turning it over. I don't know if you guys can tell, I'm kind of a type A personality, and like when I have a project, I need to really like dedicate myself to it, figure it out. Let's make a PowerPoint presentation like that. This is how I'm gonna turn it over. Slide 1, slide 2. And so I was like, how are people turning it over? And people would say things like, just turn it over. It's just like, just turn it over. The fuck are you talking about? So I actually heard someone say that step 4 is proof of step 3. That I don't have to worry about it. Like if I'm turning my will and my life over, then I'm doing a searching and fearless moral inventory. I'm allowing my higher power and another person and myself to really be honest, to look at all the pieces of my life and figure out what is good and what is bad. I love to think of an inventory like, if anybody's ever worked in a retail store, or I used to work in bars, you count everything that's in that store at some point. You count everything that's in there. And then you check it against when you ordered it and how many sales there are. And if it sells, we order more. And if it hasn't sold, we put it on sale. And we're doing the same thing with our soul. like are the parts of our soul that we love like working for us, or are they working against us? And then we get rid of it. But then we get to the part that like, well, how do I get rid of it? How do I put it on sale? How do I be the person that I want to be? And then there's that God word again. Like I'm asking him to remove my shortcomings. And there's a question in the first step that talks about complete surrender. Is complete surrender possible? Is complete surrender necessary for me to begin my recovery? And I would say, without fail, 99% of the people I've taken through the steps say, of course not. Of course I need to completely surrender. And I say, how is it possible for you to completely surrender in step 1 if you're going to surrender more in step 7? And surrender more in step 11? And surrender more in your next first step? So is complete surrender ever really possible? It's like we're practicing surrender. Just like a doctor practices medicine, just like we practice meditation, we practice prayer. So in 7, I have now learned a little bit about turning my will and my life over, and now I'm turning my whole self over to a power greater than myself. And step 7 is so hard because I have looked at all of these things and the way that they cause pain in my life, but I still kind of like them. And I don't want to admit it. Like, if someone suggests when you're in a painful pattern and you're hurting yourself over and over again, and you're crying about it, and you're miserable, and you share in every meeting, and you know everyone's sick of you fucking sharing about it, but you can't stop because you're obsessing, and then someone says, you like this. They're like, no, I don't. How would I like this? But the truth of the matter is that if it wasn't serving you, you wouldn't continue to do it. So finding out, how is this serving me? Or how do I believe it's serving me? Because the truth is, these unsavory behaviors or shortcomings, liabilities, whatever you want to call it. My sponsor doesn't like the word defects. Oh, by the way, my sponsor and my grand sponsor are on Zoom here with us today. So I have 4 generations of sponsorship in this room. And I want to thank all the people that were of service, the committee chairs, and of course, those who are operating Zoom, and all the people who did workshops, and all the people who listened. Listening is an act of service. We felt like we were not enough for too long, and we can come into Narcotics Anonymous and hear things about, like, if you don't work the steps, then you're loitering with the intent to recover, and if you're not giving back, then you're stealing from the fellowship, and if you don't do service this way, then you're doing it wrong, and I already feel like I'm not enough. So I'm here to tell all of you that you are enough, and you're welcome, wanted, needed, and loved in the rooms of Narcotics Anonymous, and that listening is a form of service. We haven't been listened to our whole lives, most of us. And now we have people who will sit intently for an hour and listen to me babble on. And thank you for your service. So back to the 7th step, back to me loving my defects, back to me hurting myself and others and thinking that I'm helping myself and others, thinking this is the only way to survive life. So I have to learn how to trust a higher power. That like one thing I thought was that I wasn't going to be funny anymore, because a lot of my humor came from being mean, like being sarcastic, being judgmental, being brutally honest, and I thought it was funny for sure. And I think some other people did too, but I was afraid I wouldn't be funny. I think it's pretty evident today that that did not happen. So I'm able to surrender those things, and it doesn't happen overnight, and it didn't happen all completely on my first round of steps. And every time I do another round of steps, some of those same liabilities are still on that round of steps. But the difference is, because I used to hear that when I was new, and people would say, well, it's always the same defects. I said, well, why am I even doing it? If it's not even going to work 20 years later, I'm going to have the same defects, then are we just like pretending, we're just joking ourselves that the 7th step actually works? But the difference is that before I was hurting people externally, I was like a hurricane, I was like the Tasmanian devil. I would just suddenly go into this rage of defects and then look back and be like, oh shoot, like was that me that destroyed all your shit? Metaphorically, mostly. But I realize now that like some of those defects are still like inside. And so they still cause me pain, but they don't necessarily have to cause everyone else pain. So like I am growing and I am changing. But the solution is spiritual in nature. Like that's how I ask for my defects of character to be removed. I'm powerless over that, but my higher power is not powerless over that. But how do I ask my higher power? What's the correct ratio? Again, what's the PowerPoint presentation for this? What's the formula? How many parts of my higher power and how many parts of me go into this type of thing? So we sort of get to the part where we sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with a power greater than ourselves as we understand it. Now we have this huge word meditation. Like, but you guys don't understand. Like, there are thoughts going in my head all the time. You guys are all spiritual. When you sit down, you don't think things. But I think all the time. When I close my eyes, I can't stop the thoughts. I'm thinking about my kids. Well, I don't have kids, but I'm sure somebody does. But I'm thinking about the grocery list. I'm thinking about work. I'm thinking about all the spiritual stuff I have to share. I'm thinking about, everything but whatever you're supposed to be thinking about when you're meditating. What is it? What should I be thinking about? God? Only God's will for me and the power to carry it out, I guess? And so often you hear, I can't meditate. I've tried. It doesn't work for me. So what I know about meditation is after my first 11th step, I had tried a few different things. Hiking as meditation, sitting in nature as meditation, laying in a bath, listening to certain types of music. And I tried it for the amount of time that I was in an 11th step. And the minute my sponsor gave me the go-ahead to go through 12, that stopped. Perfect, done. Let's move on. Got right into another first step, and then 10, 11, and 12 right out the window. Because I'm busy. I'm doing the first step again. I'm doing the second step again. I don't have time for prayer and meditation. And it was when I finally took a sponsee through the 11th step, and I saw it approaching because the steps are in order, so I knew 11 was coming. And I told myself, what if she asks me how I meditate? What if she asks me how to do it? And I have to say, well, I don't really meditate. I don't know how to do it. So I thought, I need to figure it out, which of course is like, I said that to somebody and they're like, figure out meditation. Like even that is kind of a oxymoron. But But what I did was start really thinking about it, and there's a quote that says, everyone should meditate for 20 minutes a day, unless you don't have time, and then you should meditate for an hour. I heard that saying, and I thought, well, I definitely don't have an hour, so I better get on this 20-minute boat. And I've tried a lot of things when it comes to meditation. The first thing I did, I was in Seattle, I got clean in Seattle, and I found randomly, it can either be coincidence, it can be random, or it can be God, your choice. I saw those flyers that had the little pull tabs on the, maybe you guys don't have them out here because it's too cold, but anyway, you pull the little tab and there's a number for whatever it is you want to do, and there was a free meditation thing. So I said, okay, I'm going to try it. And so I go to this meditation thing. It's 2 weeks long. My sponsor, who's on Zoom, actually, hi, Casey, she went with me to one of the sessions. And it was sitting at meditation and with your eyes open and like staring at a candle. And I did this for the 20 minutes or however long they had us do it, and like the whole world sort of turned gold around it, and I thought, oh my God, there's something wrong with my eyes. I'm never going to be able to see again. Like, they must have given me something when I came in here. There's something in the air. Like, I was scared. I really was. I was like, what happened? And then at the end of the meditation, I like blinked and the eyesight came back, and I was like, whoa, was that how you meditate? No wonder everybody's talking about meditation. And then I asked my sponsor about it, and she had a very similar experience. And so that was like really, really neat. But then in a way with meditation after that, I was like chasing the dragon. It's like I needed to have that same experience or it didn't feel like meditation. And I'm going to tell you, like 99% of the time that I meditate, there's no gold light. There's no... And I think another common misconception is people talk about prayer, and it's the literature that talks about it. It says prayer is talking to our higher power, listening is meditation. That's the easiest way to define it. That's the most universal way we can think about it. But that can also kind of be detrimental to the idea of meditation. Because if I'm sitting in meditation and my higher power is not talking to me, then maybe I'm doing something wrong. Like, am I not doing this right? Is everybody else having these, like, things happening in their ears? Like, God's like, hey, you should go with this guy instead of that guy. You should pick this job instead of that job. And like, I can't hear, like, I don't speak that language or something. And I really thought that there was something that everyone else was getting, but I wasn't getting. And I was friends with a religious person at the time, and she would always talk to me about how her God talked to her. And, well, yeah, God talked to me, and God told me this, God told me that, God told me this. And I'm like, well, God's not telling me anything. And then I was reading this, like, old classic book, and the main character in that book God starts talking to him. And I'm like, this fucking guy too? Like, everybody gets to talk to God, and I don't? But it also says in that part of the literature that, like, sharing in a meeting can be prayer and listening in a meeting can be meditation. So if that's true, then God can talk to me through other people. So if God can talk to me through other people, maybe God can also talk to me through billboards, through music, through whatever it is that makes me think, oh, this revelation. Sometimes when I pray, I say things that I never thought. I'm like, oh, so is that God talking to me? And the answer is yes to all of those and no to all of those. It's like completely up to you. But what I do find is that in meditation, like, the benefits of meditation don't happen in the time that I sit in meditation. And that was something that I was very confused about for a really long time. I thought if I'm sitting here quietly with my eyes closed, focusing on my breath, which is not the only way to meditate, it's just like prayer. Y'all can do however works for you, but I find there is value in sitting. And a lot of people call it just sitting. because that's really what it is just sitting there and being quiet and closing my eyes or opening them and focusing on something. And when I do that, so many times during that process, it sucks. And it feels like it's not working. And my mind is scattered. And I'm not doing it right. And that's what it feels like. But then the rest of my day, it feels a little bit more centered. And I understand why they say if you don't have time, then you need to meditate more, because when I meditate, it expands my time. I feel like there's more time to be had when I have that meditation moment. And I'll be honest with y'all, I still struggle with prayer. And the more that I meditate, the less I find prayer necessary, because I think my higher power already knows my heart. So I still ask myself, how do I pray? Like, especially because the literature says that thing, pray only for the knowledge of God's will for us and the power to carry that out. Only. Don't you dare pray for anything different. If you do, you'll be sorry. But it already told me in step 3 that I need to be able to express the full range of human emotions with my higher power. So now I'm confused. So I'm thinking, okay, here's what I'll do. Okay, God, you can have whatever you want, and of course, like, your will be done, that kind of stuff, but here's what I want. So just take it into consideration. Of course, it's all you, but just take into consideration what I want to happen, if you would, please. But I'm so grateful that my higher power doesn't really listen to me all that much. Because what I want is not what's best for me most of the time, or it definitely wasn't when I was new. When I came into Narcotics Anonymous, like I said, I was a hollow shell of a person. I had hollow shells of relationships. I cried myself to sleep every night. I was in a toxic, codependent relationship, and the only thing that I wanted from Narcotics Anonymous was to save that relationship. That's all I wanted. And I thought, I can't afford to go see a doctor for my personality disorder that I had diagnosed myself with. And if I go to Narcotics Anonymous and I work the steps, I even thought about getting a sponsor who was a therapist, because I figured that would be even better, like even closer to the free therapy that I was looking for. So I thought, this is perfect. They'll do it for free. They're going to fix me for free. And then I can keep this toxic relationship that I'm in. And I was just so deluded. I was just so out there in this like fantasy world, because that person that I was with was using. Why would getting clean and work the steps help me to keep somebody who was using? It doesn't even make sense. And luckily my higher power was like, yeah, it doesn't make sense. We're not going to do that. And so I lost that relationship when I had about 6 months clean. And that was the only reason I was clean. And I talked about this yesterday in the workshop, so sorry if you were there, but I think in the beginning we are always saying, like, do the right thing for the right reasons. But it's so hard to do the right thing, like, at all. It's hard to come to a meeting when I'm new and I'm scared and I'm shaking and I don't want to be there and I just want to use, or I'm embarrassed or I'm shy. And now I have to do it for the right reason too? Why can't I just go to the meeting because I really like that guy or girl over there and I want them to see me all cute in my new shoes or whatever? Like, why can't I stay clean for my dog? Why can't I stay clean for my boyfriend? You know, and the truth is, just for today, stay clean for whatever keeps you clean today. Doesn't matter. Ultimately, it will become for you if you stay clean and you do the work, because that's what happened for me. When he left, I stayed clean anyway. I had just enough willingness to build a tiny support group so that when he left, I was able to text somebody at 3 a.m. when I came home and all of his stuff was gone. Now, that relationship wasn't exactly the healthiest. It was a romantic relationship, but sometimes it takes what it takes. Like, willingness is a process. What I talked about before, at least I was not willing to do all the things when I came to Narcotics Anonymous. There's a lot of things. It asks us to do a lot of things. We have to go to meetings. We have to go to 90 meetings in 90 days. We have to share or listen, depending on who you're talking to. we have to find a sponsor, we have to find a home group, we have to be of service, whatever that means. And we have to be honest, we have to work the steps. Like, it goes on and on and on. Like, if you ask 10 different people, you're going to get 10 different solutions from each of those 10 people. Now I got 100 things I have to do, and I'm new. You don't understand. My life's a mess. Your life might be good, but how is writing in this notebook going to help me? I have bills to pay. I have relationships to keep. It may help you, but it's not going to help me. And so I was very unwilling in the beginning. I didn't do 90 and 90. I would not fellowship. I would come late to meetings with a hood on. I would sit in the corner. I would tell people in my shares, don't talk to me. If you're a man, you got nothing for me. Don't fucking talk to me. I would. And I remember having a friend later, about 2 years clean, and he said, one time you shared in a meeting and I really related to you and I wanted to come talk to you, but I couldn't. Because she told me not to. And then I was resentful to the fellowship. Because I was like, nobody's talking to me. Nobody wants to be my friend. You guys are all assholes. But I wasn't willing. But I was willing to do some things. And I think that the some things that each of us is willing to do in the beginning, they all differ. Like, I was willing to read the literature. And I was willing to do the steps. So I've done a lot of step work and I've read a lot of literature. Some people stay in the fellowship for a long time and they don't ever crack the books and they don't ever work the steps. And I'm going to tell you, you are welcome, wanted, needed, and loved in the Fellowship of Narcotics Anonymous. If you're not willing, you're not willing. Just stay and it will come. It will come for you too. There was a great speaker in Vegas who said, if you don't work the steps, you're a fool. But you're welcome here, fool. So it's so true. And so that's what I was willing to do. But I didn't go to my first convention until I had 5 years clean. I wasn't willing to even go to activities. The first time I fellowshipped was after my home group, and everybody was sitting in this long table in the center of the restaurant. I went and got a booth on the side. I didn't even sit with them. I was so nervous. I was so shy, and I was telling this newcomer who's not here today, but you guys know him, Brantley, and he was sitting at our table, and I was telling him, I used to be really shy. I used to be really shy, and I used to be scared, and I used to be mean. And I'm pretty sure anybody who has met me at this convention or seen me thinks that's a lie, because that's not who I am anymore. But I talked about being spiritually fit, and that's a big part of it, is being willing to do the things I wasn't willing to do before. And one of the things that has been most monumental for me, and especially recently, is being willing to be wrong about who I am. And that's after years of step work. Because I've worked a lot of steps. Like I said, that's the part that I was willing to do. And my last round of steps, I started that round of steps thinking, why do this? And I was joking about sharing about this with my table this morning. If I'm feeling good, why do the work? It's just going to make me feel worse, Because I've worked a 4-step before. It's hard. It's hard work. And I might think that if my pool is really clear and clean on the top, why am I going to fuck it up by cleaning up the bottom? And get all that algae and nasty shit to float to the top, and now my pool's all gross and green. But the truth is, all of that is underneath it, and I need to clean it out so that I have a nice, serene, clean pool all the way through. Because I know that stuff is in here, whether I'm looking at it or not. So this last time I did the steps, I had a hard time walking through it because I wasn't desperate. But I still wanted more, because it's not enough. Nothing's ever enough for me, and it's not enough freedom either. I want more freedom. So I'm working the steps, and I realize that the way that I see myself and the person that I am and the person that I want to be is not the way that other people see me. And it's not the way that I'm showing myself on the outside, because my whole life I was a person who was tough and who didn't have feelings and who didn't like people. And so people saw that, and I wasn't getting invited to go to the parties or to go to the spook show or whatever. And when I would be like, hey, why didn't I get invited to that? People would say, well, we didn't think you would want to go. We didn't think you would like those people. We didn't think you would like to have fun and be included. I'm like, of course I want to have fun and be included. Why do these people think that about me? Is it them? Are they still assholes? Or is it me? And I need to be the person that I want people to think I am. So I started to look at fear of intimacy. And that's what I worked on, is being intimate with other people. And understanding that, like, as long as I'm secure in the love of a power greater than myself, then love can never hurt me. Like, I can love you. You don't have to love me back. I can be kind to you. You don't have to be kind back. I can be friendly. I can give that smile. And if you're going through something, it's not about me. Because I love myself today. Like, that's the difference. I hated myself when I first got here, and I thought all of you guys would hate me too if you understood who I was. And I've done the work to be spiritually fit, and I like myself, and I'm authentic. So nobody else can shake that anymore. Like, nobody holds my serenity in their hands, even if they want to. So, like, when you're mean to me or you don't like me, I'm like, that's about you. Because what's not to like? So, I'm not saying that I'm perfect, although my sponsor says I'm perfect with all my imperfections. And the prayer that you said for us this morning, David, reflected that, and I thank you. But I can say that I'm fit. I'm spiritually fit. I'm mentally fit. I'm physically fit. Last year, I set a goal for myself. I wanted to be in the best shape of my life. That's the way I put it. Now, mind you, I had eating disorders. I was obsessed with my weight. I only ate like egg whites. Like when I was like first getting clean, I was like 30. I'm like, okay, that's a lofty goal. How am I going to be in the best shape of my life? And luckily, I have a sister who's in recovery, and she said to me, yeah, but how were you mentally at that time? How were you emotionally at that time? How were you spiritually at that time? So when I put all of those factors into it, because it's not just how I look, it's how I feel, it's who I am. And I'm going to tell you, because of Narcotics Anonymous, because of this fellowship, because of people like you doing service to people who are mean to you and not grateful and are telling you you're doing it wrong, and you still keep coming back and you still keep loving them and you still keep telling them you're okay, you're all right, just keep coming. And if you don't like it, get on the committee. Because of all of that, I'm in the best shape of my life today. Thank you for letting me share.
Thank you so much, Michelle. That was awesome. Can we get another round of applause for all of our speakers? And I know you guys have heard this over the last couple of days, but I would really love to thank our convention committee. This team of folks has worked together well. It's been an honor and a pleasure to be able to serve on this committee, and being able to share experience, strength, and hope by being of service has been a huge part of my recovery. And so next year will be the 40th annual Alaska Regional Convention of Narcotics Anonymous, and it'll be in Fairbanks next year. So we're very excited that we all get to travel there. And if any of you, have some ideas of things that you really liked about this convention or things that you really didn't like about this convention, because not everything is everybody's cup of tea, please be sure and let us know, and so we can pass it along to the next committee so that they can add some things or do some things differently. I have asked Adam from Fairbanks to come read just for today. Huh? Oh, we do recover, sorry. I got them backwards. Still first cup of coffee. It's a really big cup, but it's still my first cup. It's my story, I'm sticking to it.
Adam Addict.
Hi, Adam.
We do recover. When at the end of the road we find that we can no longer function as human beings, either with or without drugs, we all face the same dilemma. What is there left to do? There seems to be this alternative: either go on to the bitter ends, jails, institutions, or death, or find a new way to live. In years gone by, very few addicts ever had this last choice. Those who are addicted today are more fortunate. I can't see. For the first time in man's entire history, a simple way has been proven itself in the lives of many addicts. It is available to us all. This is a simple spiritual, not religious program known as Narcotics Anonymous.
Thanks, Adam. All right, and I think Tony has just for today.
Tony, formerly from Fairbanks.
Yes.
And an addict.
Hi, Tony.
Tell yourself,
Just for today.
just for today, right? My thoughts will be on my recovery, living and enjoying life without the use of drugs. Just for today, I will have faith in someone in NA who believes in me and wants to help me in my recovery. Just for today, I will have a program. I will try to follow it to the best of my ability. Just for today, through NA, I will get a better perspective on my life. Just for today, I will be unafraid. My thoughts will be on my new associations, people who are not using and who have found a new way of life. So long as I follow that way, I have nothing to fear. Thanks.
All right, let's circle up and close in the somewhat usual manner. All right, put your left foot in so you never have to feel left out. Hang on to the added next to you like your life depends on it, because it absolutely does. Many of us have said.
Taking our will in our lives, guiding in our recovery, and showing how to live for me. Keeping our path as
$37 years in one day.
We still have merchandise left, and we have speaker tapes downstairs. Thank you.
I got so much out of it. I'm glad I could. Not just my chest. Very nice. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't want to block out anyone because that was only hair graphics.
Are you? I'm doing next year. Hey, brother.
You're running for service, Fairbanks.
That's right. Yeah.
Jenny, never alone. Okay.
I didn't even know when the picture was being taken. So.
The women in all those things are speaker tapes, so picture a couple of speakers should be on there.
Okay, not all the Fairbanks.
I have to been taking,
Let's get out of the way so the next party can come up.
been taking a break from service so I can get jacked up to get onto the yeah.